It's another week. It's another crossover event. And we're here to talk about, well, okay, I know this isn't a big event right now since they barely put it out there for press, but there's a remake of Firestarter coming out by Stephen King.
Yeah.
I haven't even seen it yet because they're like, we'll give it to you 1 minute before it comes out in theaters.
Oh, so they are going to give it to you?
Oh, yeah, no, they said they'll send it to me, but it was like literally like 1 minute before the first theatrical release. I'm like,
Is it a theatrical release? I thought it was just coming out on Peacock.
No, it's getting theater too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to be good. I'll tell you, I'm not the world's biggest fan of either the book or the original movie. I mean, I love Drew Barrymore, and I love, who was it who directed that one? Do y'all remember offhand?
It was supposed to be John Carpenter.
It was supposed to be Carpenter. It was not,
and then it's the guy who directed Commando, Mark Lester.
Right.
Oh,
yes.
Carpenter did do one, which was Christine.
Yes.
Which is not as good as your average Carpenter, but it's not bad. But, you know, the guy with the big brain here, that's Robert Summers. He and his brother Russell Summers run a company called Grand Scheme Productions that makes films and all sorts of different stuff. I've been lucky enough to first have him on my projects on Deliberations of Doom on oneofus.net, and now I just go and help him with his projects because he's too big for that now.
Oh.
So, but he's going to be our guest this week, joining me from oneofus.net, and that's you.
Oh, me?
Yeah, you.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, and I'm Martin Thomas, which you may know me from Double Toasted and other stuff like that.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about our favorite, and if you are a subscriber at oneofus.net, the least favorite, which you know is going to be fun, Stephen King adaptations in film and television. And boy, have we got some picks. Man, we could do 4 hours on this topic alone. In fact, we actually have a Deliberations of Doom trilogy where there is like 6 hours of us talking about Stephen King adaptations.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's a lot to cover there.
There really is.
Well, the guy's writing 2 books a year? One under a pseudonym just because they were like, you can't do more than 1 book a year. And he's like, oh, I'll fix that.
Now he's writing noir books or something too?
Well, he's also, he's got a sideline now where he writes like pretty straight noir. I mean, they're noir with horror tinges.
Well, I just read his latest book, Billy Summers, and there's nothing supernatural about that at all.
Isn't that tied into the bigger world of like The Outsider and Mr. Mercedes and all that?
Possibly. Yeah. I hadn't read those, so I don't know. But it's a lot like Barry, really. The show Barry.
Well, he's got a whole sideline now, which is like sort of hard-boiled noir that has... Sometimes it hints towards supernatural elements, but it never actually is a supernatural element, you know. But they're good. I've read Mr. Mercedes. I've read a couple of the others, but I was like, oh, they're good. Haven't seen any of the adaptations except The Outsider on HBO, which is really good. But we're not talking about that this week. Instead, we're going to go and just go, well, maybe we're talking about this. I don't know. We're going to go and do our picks here of like the best Stephen King adaptations, of which Firestarter is not among them. And I'm going to let our guest, Sir Robert Summers, start this. Wait, you're a duke.
Wait,
right?
are you British?
Yeah, I'm a lord. Yes, but it's fine. It's fine.
Remember.
Just address me accordingly. I would say so. This was an overwhelming thing to have to come up with because the sheer volume of Stephen King out there, books, TV shows, just the wealth of things that A, he's written and B, have been adapted are kind of overwhelming. So I was a bit thrown to have to shove all this into a box because I think the other thing we have to ask is this the best adaptation or is this the one I like the most? So I was kind of thrown by that. So I picked one that I think is the best adaptation of Stephen King that I've ever seen because I've read a lot of King, but I would say my favorite short story of his is Rita Hayworth in the Shawshank Redemption. And I loved it, and they made a movie, and
What was the movie called?
The movie was called... I was getting to that.
Was it called Rita Hayworth?
It was called The Shawshank Redemption, which is probably, I think the director and the author agreed, this is one of the worst titles ever for a movie. It just, I think it kept people away.
No one knew what it meant.
Right,
yeah.
But as a movie, it is an amazing adaptation of story. It's funny, it's heartwarming, all the performances are great, and I think, and it's a TNT new classic. It basically keeps that entire channel, going because they keep showing it.
Well, it's always listed as one of the greatest movies of all time.
I think it's number 2 on the IMDb after The Godfather.
It was number 1 for like 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
For IMDb, which is very audience sourced to be clear, but like nonetheless.
But I think it shows why the movie's so good. I just think it's very everybody loves that movie, and so it's just hard to not have it be one of his best.
Especially that it contains prison rape.
Yeah.
and it's still loved by everyone.
Yes, that is a hard thing to get over. There is some dark stuff in the movie, and yet it handles it well.
It's a handful of Stephen King films that are really kind of feel-good Stephen King
Yeah.
movies, but nonetheless deal with incredibly dark stuff,
Mhm.
like Stand By Me, which
Yeah.
is like his closest we've gotten to a biopic, apparently, of
Sure.
his youth. Or The Green Mile, which also is like one of those deals with incredibly dark stuff that happens, but in the end, you're like, oh, I feel all charmed.
Well,
Yeah.
because for so long everybody thought of him for his work with the supernatural and
Right.
horror, and then with the Shawshank Redemption and Stand By Me, it's like, oh wait, this guy's a writer who can write humans.
He contains multitudes.
Which is always, even with his horror work, that was always the best part, was the character work.
Yeah.
He could bring these characters to life so that when bad things happen to him, you felt for it.
He always has written deep, detailed characters where you really, by the end, you feel like you know everything about this
Mhm.
person, but he does it in a way that's not boring,
Yeah.
except for maybe in the Tommy Doctors.
But I think a lot of times it gets lost in the movie adaptations. That's why I
Yeah,
thought Shawshank
sure.
was so good. Like
Well,
it got all of that.
it
It
took-
didn't just focus on a monster. or
It took a
something.
tiny short story,
Yeah.
and almost a novella, not quite,
Yeah.
but like, and adapted it to a very long film. You got Frank Darabont to direct it,
Yeah.
who has gone on to be one of the definitive Stephen King adaptation guys.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like he's done several of the best thought of adaptations from Stephen King, and yeah, it's just charming with Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins. It's just, I dare you to watch this movie and not think, wow, that was one of the best
Yep.
movies I've seen in a long time.
It's pretty. So what did you pick?
Oh no, Martin gets to go next.
Oh, you're next.
Oh, I'm next.
Okay.
Well, in that same vein of Stephen King stories that don't have supernatural in them, I would go with Misery, which was, at the time, I remember reading it, was my favorite Stephen King novel. And it is a movie that nails it perfectly. Matter of fact, the only detail that's changed, which was the hobbling of the main character, they somehow made it worse.
Yeah. And that was Rob Reiner.
Rob
right?
Reiner,
Who's
yes.
known for being a comedy director
Mhm.
mainly. And he
Mhm.
made this astonishingly dark little film, but with moments of humor.
Sure. Well, hadn't he directed Stand By Me before?
Yes, he
Yeah,
also
Yes,
he
did
has
that.
a killer run there. He has about 10 or 12 years there where he's just knocking them out of the park.
Yeah.
And this one especially. And honestly, I had never seen Kathy Bates before, and she
Oh,
is
really?
amazing in that.
Oh,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah. And I remember I read the book actually before I saw the movie, and I remember thinking, how are you going to do this? It's mostly the guy in a bed,
Oh.
like the whole movie. And also James Caan. I don't know that he'd been better since The Godfather. He was
Oh,
great in it.
he hadn't. I mean, after The Godfather, his career is not remarkable.
It's definitely spotty.
But then he shows up in this, and he nails
Yeah,
it.
he's killer.
Yeah, he's killer. But that movie, it's one of those movies you think of if you're at all a public figure and you have to deal with any kind of crazy fans. It's the first thing you think of.
Yeah.
Is that I don't want to end up tied to somebody's bed.
No, it's become a meme in just general thought.
Mhm.
That idea, the Misery idea, the Kathy Bates idea. They even went on recently with a television series, and I want to say it was on Hulu, Castle Rock.
Yeah.
Oh,
In
yeah,
the
yeah,
second
yeah.
season, they had a younger version of her character on the
Mhm.
show as one of the main characters of it, because people respond to that character, and they did it on there in a way like, well, I mean, she obviously always wasn't this completely like homicidal and screwed up. You know, there had to be a point where you like her, and this is that point.
And they did it as a play on Broadway with Bruce Willis.
They did.
What?
Yes. It didn't play for that long.
Did he
but
play the Kathy Bates character?
No.
I would have preferred.
Here was
Yeah.
I think it was the sister from Roseanne. What's her name? Yeah, she was. I think.
Laurie Metcalf.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
she was the
Award-winning Laurie
Oh,
Metcalf.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's a great movie. It's genuinely frightening. It's one of King's most claustrophobic films,
mhm.
no question. I mean, I remember watching that the first time. It's like, I don't like being snowed in the best of
Yeah.
times.
No, of course. I have this phobia of being held hostage.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yes, and I don't mean like somebody's going to tie me down, but just when I'm in any kind of situation where it could be just emotionally somebody has you hostage.
Well, that
or...
changes my weekend plan.
I was trying to, the other thing I always think about with Misery is, remember he sneaks out and she figures it out because the penguin's facing
Yes.
the wrong way.
Yes.
And I always think about that when I'm in other people's houses.
Always
I'm
face the
like,
penguin
always
the right
face the
way.
penguin the
Well,
correct
that
way.
was, at least as far as I know, it was the first time I'd ever seen that. and now it's been in movies ever since then.
Yeah, the other thing I love is the build to what the sheriff is going to do. I don't want to spoil it if anybody hasn't seen the movie, but it's a totally great payoff.
How many years have they had?
I know. Do I feel bad? You've had 25,
but
30 years.
It also is the first time, which it's been replicated over and over and over again, where you have that police figure who you think is going to save the day, and they end up getting killed.
Yeah.
And that's a thing. Now when they do it in a story, I spot it a mile away. I'm like,
but it's such a great payoff in that movie.
Oh, sure.
And more on that later when we get to another pick, which doesn't go exactly that way, but certainly police figures are not necessarily to be trusted in Stephen King books. But speaking of being snowed in, I'm going to go to my pick, which is, okay, I'm a basic bitch. I'm going to pick The Shining by Stanley Kubrick.
You can't not pick that, though.
I mean, you can't not, because it is, despite what Stephen King thinks, because I'm sorry, I've seen the TV version he got made, and no, I get it. It's an allegory for his alcoholism and the struggles he went through. Is there anything he wasn't
so was Misery.
to?
Yeah.
and Maximum Overdrive.
You have one of the best directors of all time objectively making one of his best movies and in a genre. And I do think everything, like for King, I think he felt Nicholson was the wrong casting. I believe that was his big complaint, was that he already seems crazy. He doesn't go crazy. But Nicholson's amazing in the movie. Yeah. He's utterly terrifying.
I think that's kind of the point there, is that when we first meet him, yes, he's supposed to be the guy who's like, no, he seems like somebody you would rent a giant hotel to, but you can tell immediately watching it that everything is not entirely right with this guy. And that's what keeps you on edge throughout the entire film. And it takes a while before he goes. I mean, for a while, you're rooting for him to be the hero still. Because you're like, you can break out of this, dude. Don't take that drink. Don't listen to the ghost bartender. You know, I mean, as a former bartender, you should listen to the ghost bartender.
No, you should not.
Chris giving bad takes. Chris. Yeah. Don't listen to the ghost bartender.
You've given terrible advice and talk people into doing horrible things.
But you picked a good movie. I would say that may be one of the few horror movies that every time I watch it, I get creeped out. It's such a slow burn. And honestly, I think the other thing about the movie is he improved on King. And I feel like the end of the book is like, I think the hedges come to life. They're like creatures and stuff. And instead, he just made it this, he lets the horror live in your mind like it lives with the characters and their ghosts. Is this real? Is this happening?
Yeah.
And time and space start to compress on each other. Like I remember just that thing where he goes in and he says, you were always the caretaker. And you're like, oh, this has been going on forever.
There's a real validity to what you're saying in the sense that, like, I'm not always crazy with movies that leave it up to you. Like, is it just in their head? But
like,
The Shining is told.
Just tell me.
The Shining is told largely from the viewpoint of Jack Torrance as he's going insane. And by the end, you're like, it's not clear whether ghosts exist at all.
Yeah.
I mean, he's walking around this hotel filled with memorabilia everywhere and photographs and history. All this stuff could just be part of his fevered imagination as he's, you know, this serious alcoholic.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. When I watch it, and when he's at his, sane part in the beginning, he agrees to this and goes and looks at that hotel. My first thought was, if I'm him, I go, oh, screw this. No way.
There's got to be a better way to make a buck.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I get it. You're like, this looks like a hard movie, but there's already a black guy there and he's fine. So his Stepback Brothers is like, it's cool, dude.
It doesn't go well for him either, though.
Yeah,
it doesn't go well for him. Honestly, the biggest thing for me is, as a writer, that's the part that I relate to the most, is that I think it's actually this giant horror story about how hard it is to write. Yeah, and so that's the part that gives me the heebie-jeebies when I watch the movie.
Yeah, no,
is 100%. It sucks to write and you're all alone and you're going kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I get out of it.
But I still think a masterpiece. It's one of the few times I go, King, you're just wrong about this particular
film. I don't think he's wrong.
Okay.
Oh. I think the movie's great and I think it does improvements, but I think King has valid points about what he doesn't like about it.
It doesn't accurately interpret what he was trying to get across in his novel. I will hand you that.
I think it's
so as an adaptation of his book, not good, but as a movie, good.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay. I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yes, because I mean, the book meant a lot to him, and it is inarguably one of his best books too.
It is.
So, anyway, what about your next choice, Robert Summers?
So my next choice, Lord Summers. Yeah.
Sorry,
my next choice is one that I just love. Is The Dead Zone. David Cronenberg directed, written by Jeffrey Boehm, who wrote Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, a bunch of other stuff. And Christopher Walken in what is probably who has an amazing career, but in probably my favorite performance of his. He's in leading man mode, but he's haunted, he's tortured, and he is the person who basically survives an accident and then is gifted with the ability to see they call it the dead zone. Yeah, the possible futures, and just an amazing movie. It has 3 distinct parts. Kind of the first part where he figures out what's happening to him, and then there's a hunt for a serial killer, and then the third part is a part that a lot of us referenced in 2016. So where he decides that the presidential candidate that is introduced may be dangerous.
Yeah, it's funny you referenced it in 2016. I referenced it back when the first George Bush.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I think we all went like, it's
yeah. So,
and also Nostradamus somewhere.
Yeah. But a great movie. I think they really figured out how to do the book, and filled with Cronenbergian imagery that I think is just hard to kind of get out of your head. There's a pair of scissors that...
I was going to say, like, despite all the extreme and really well done gore and creatively done gore in Cronenberg's career, there's a scene without visible gore as it's happening with someone killing themselves with a pair of scissors that is one of the ones that I still have in my nightmares.
Yeah, it's an unforgettable image.
Effectively shot.
But I think the whole movie is filled with imagery like that. And as I said, I don't think Walken's been better in anything. And I love Walken.
Well, because he wasn't the Christopher Walken.
He's not giving he's not doing himself.
Yeah, just even to like think that like he's the one in that role. You go, how did that work? It's like, oh yeah, because he wasn't then what he is now.
And I think, for all of that, it's definitely one of my faves that I go back to over and over and over again. I look at the story and I always look for something to steal.
One of the ones that people forget is by David Cronenberg. I'm always like, David Cronenberg fans, you should pay attention to this because it's one of 2 films he did within the system.
Yeah,
that are both really great films, which always made me wonder where he wasn't willing to go back because they were both incredibly well received movies.
Yeah, true.
I don't know.
I think it freed him to do what he wanted to do after that.
By the way, I got to do a commentary recently on Junk Food Cinema's stuff for subscribers with Brian Salisbury for A View to a Kill. Christopher Walken. The bad guy. The
with
last
the bleach blonde hair.
We did the whole thing I don't know why this happened, but it was like, hi, this is Jackass. I'm Christopher Walken, and this one's called Jumping Out of a Blimp.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
You should listen to that. Anyway, Martin.
Okay. My other choice was something that I didn't see coming, but it was, I guess it does, I'm bending the rules a bit because this was a mini series, not so much a movie, but 11/22/63.
Thank you.
Which coming up on Hulu, and so much of the Stephen King TV stuff had not been working out that well, at least getting mixed reviews.
At that point.
Yeah, at that point. But I don't know. I think I must have read some good review of it, and I thought, oh, let's give it a shot. And wow, was I completely blown away by it. The premise itself, that you have a divorced writer who meets up with his friend who says, I have found a portal that can take you back in time. I've been trying to use this, and I want you to try it out. And he does. And he's like, now I need you to finish my mission of trying to stop the JFK assassination, because that is ruining everything. And in going back in time, he's establishing this life, but also trying to meet and stop Oswald from killing JFK. And even down to one of the times where he succeeds and comes back, and a complete apocalypse has happened back in our time. He has to go back and try to fix it. And had an ending that brought me to tears. I was like, wow, I got so emotionally invested in this.
I've still not read the book. I have it sitting on my shelf. Before I owned the book, I saw the series on Hulu and went, because everyone was saying, oh my God, it's so good with, I think, James Franco. I just could not stop watching, and I'm a sucker for time travel stuff anyway.
Sure.
But I think this is the only Stephen King time travel novel, at least. I mean, maybe there was a short story, but I can't think of something else where he dealt specifically with time travel. And it's not a horror book at all.
No,
it's
not
a
at all.
straight up sci-fi time travel story.
How many episodes?
I think it's 8.
Yeah.
8? And do you guys feel like it maintained for all 8?
Oh, it absolutely did.
Yeah. It's really...
I have not watched this, and now I have to watch it.
It's surprisingly good, because there's so many places where it could trip itself up. Yeah. Or time travel always gets sloppy.
Yeah.
And
this
it
never
stays
does.
tight.
Yeah.
Wow.
Stayed really tight. And like you said, it stuck the landing. It gives it has the heart-filled... sad but happy ending.
Yes.
if
Man.
you will. Which
You guys
every
are selling
time travel
this one. You
story
guys are
except for
selling this
Bill and
one.
Ted's has that. So,
Yeah,
but the third
right.
one,
The
does,
third one,
but-
see,
yeah.
if you do it enough,
Eventually, you're like, I never should have time traveled.
right? But yeah, James Franco and Chris Cooper, and I think I just love anything with Chris Cooper. in it.
They always tell you you should never time travel, but if someone tomorrow was like, "Here's a time travel thing, you can time travel," would you like be like, put it under the bed, I'm not gonna touch it, or you'd be like,
well, all
But
right.
here's my thing with time travel. You always want to go back. Everybody, no one ever really wants to go forward.
I'm the one who wants to go forward.
You want to go forward?
Yes, I don't want to screw things
I
up.
don't necessarily want to go back. There's,
Yeah.
there's
Really?
not,
Yeah.
there's
That's
not
why I
good
feel like
things
you
for
always
me
wanna
going
go
back.
back and
But the
fix
new
things.
Doctor Who is black. It's going to be fine.
Oh yeah, sure.
I don't know how
Once
they're
he
gonna do
fixes
that.
it, right?
Once he fixes everything, because that's going to be the whole thing. He's like every episode is like the first episode he goes back and goes like, oh no, I don't think so. And then he goes forward and goes like, what is this shit about flying man-eating radishes? God damn, now I got to go figure out what I did wrong. That would be cool. They should.
We
do
could
that.
go to Africa and get free labor. You know what? I think you should not do that. Okay, well if you say that.
Oh,
then-
it is. I mean, like, wait a minute, aren't you black? No,
Yeah, no.
just like I've been at the beach.
So, what is yours?
All right, so I'm gonna piss people off, and I don't care. I went for the obvious one, The Shining. I'm gonna see one of my personal favorites that I go back to again and again and again, just a comfort food Stephen King movie, and I know Stephen King hates it. It's Maximum Lovers.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's so funny.
Yes.
Only because I only just watched it yesterday.
Really?
Yes, yes.
So it's like fresh in your mind.
It's fresh in my mind.
But you've never seen it?
I'd never seen it.
Why had you held off on seeing?
Because I always heard
It's
it was one of the worst
famously-
movies
Yeah.
ever
we
made.
Well,
should be
because-
clear here. Stephen King directed this movie.
Yes.
Only film
The only film
Yes,
he's
he
ever
He
directed.
made a big deal about directing it.
Yeah.
He did a trailer where he looked at the audience and said, I'm going to scare the hell out of you.
Yeah.
He talked so much shit only to have the movie come out and then go like, I learned something, which is that I should never direct a movie ever again.
I mean,
Yeah.
that ties.
But
into
that's
the whole-
wrong.
No, I wish he would go back and
Yeah.
direct another movie because I love this movie. It's a bad movie, but it's a perfect bad movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean if you watch this type of film. It is so much fun. It's ridiculous. It's gory when it needs to be gory, but it never like totally goes over the top reveling in it either. It's just like, ooh, you saw just as much as you needed to do. As this type of movie, I mean, yes, it has some editing issues. It's a little sloppy, no question. But like, and the acting is far from perfect. But that's what
I
you
think
want from this sort of thing.
from that kind of, a bad midnight movie.
Yeah,
I think it works perfectly for that.
total basic premise, which is never explained or even tried to be explained, which is that, hey, guess what? Machines are intelligent now and they want to kill us.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And had they not explained it, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
They explain it, and it's the dumbest explanation.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah,
love
I
the
don't even-
explanation.
I don't even
It's
remember
the vacuum cleaner
explanation now.
explanation?
It's that a comet is passing
Yeah.
over the
With the
Earth.
vacuum cleaner
Yes.
explanation?
Right?
What, it
Because he
sucks?
says, like, you send in the street cleaners or whatever to clean up the planet before you. I love that. I was
Oh.
like, I'm all in.
I
This is
thought
a
it
good-
was more like Night of the Living Dead, where they're like, I don't know, maybe it's this, but we'll
Oh
never
no,
know.
it's a comet that's passing over the Earth over the course of a week,
Okay.
Yeah.
and that's what brings the machines, at least some of them, intermittent machines, alive and makes them homicidal.
Some are pissed off, but definitely not the new iPhone, which now you can get for we're not sponsored.
And at the very end, it's revealed that within that cloud were aliens, but a Russian satellite that also happened to be armed with a nuke took them out. And that's when
Everything
went
about
back to
this is
normal.
awesome. This is objectively awesome. Everything you're saying makes the movie even more awesome. Also, the truck with the giant green goblin face on it,
so iconic.
totally rad.
Yeah.
Just
And
somebody
and
bought that recently. I remember seeing a story a couple of
See,
2
that's a
years
good
ago in the
purchase.
news where
That's-
someone was like,
it's a good use
"Yeah,
of
we
money.
actually found," and they could do just the front end of it, obviously, not the trailer or what have you.
Oh, okay, 'cause
But they
I-
bought it and then just kind of moved the mask onto something else.
Okay,
but
because
Also-
I read that the mask had been disassembled.
it had been lost.
Okay.
They didn't know what happened to it.
Okay.
how does one lose a giant green goblin
Dude, you'd be
face?
surprised. Like Hollywood shit gets lost all the
Yeah,
time.
no,
and then
the
rediscovered.
minute something is done, they tear it down and it
Yeah.
goes away.
Yeah.
We would have had a fourth season of the 60s Batman, but they
had already
torn
torn
down
it
the set, and that was the most expensive part. So they was
Yeah.
like, screw it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Talk
One of
about
the
your
most-
alternate time travel realities.
For a 3-season show, it was one of the top 3 most successful shows of the 60s.
Mhm.
Batman.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also want to mention before we go off Maximum Overdrive,
Sorry.
total AC/DC soundtrack,
Oh, it's
which
and it's-
rules.
I would normally be like, you're really picking just one artist for your soundtrack, and you're just gonna
You're gonna pick
blast
one.
it incredibly loud over everything. I'm like, there's like maybe 4 choices for that for the
Mhm.
band, and AC/DC is an acceptable choice for that, and it works.
This goes
It
to
does.
show.
It does work. It flavors the whole movie.
Yeah, completely. I think that movie's really fun. I know a lot of people think it's really bad, but speaking
It
of
can
that,
be both.
it can be both. Speaking of that, we are done with this proper episode of the Best of Stephen King, which means here's the point where I poke you to become a subscriber at oneofus.net. And if you do that at the $5 or above level, which is we call brown coats, but they're all named after cutesy things. There's like Jedi Knight, Time Lord, whatever, you get it. But if you subscribe to that, you can get the bonus videos for this and every week's show. And we're going to talk about the worst Stephen King adaptations, which is what you wanted to see. Anyway. So now you kind of have to, right? But also, please leave comments. We love to read your comments on the air. We love to talk about them and address them and maybe think about future episodes. Somebody left a comment after last week's show that now we're thinking about a show doing soon. So saying that's, if you leave comments and you say things like that, that affects us. We do, in fact, change what we might do. But enough about me and this show. You should watch Martin Thomas over at Double Toasted.
Thank you.
Yeah, where he teams up with some horrible people, but he's great. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Am I though? No, I'm kidding. And then Lord Robert Summers.
That's right. Thank you.
If you look at GrandSchemeProductions.com?
And now it's SummersBrothers.net. So we made it easier.
Have you changed it?
We changed
Okay.
it to it's both, but SummersBrothers.net. That's
he and his brother, they run this film company. They've made a number of short films, several which are multiple award winning. And several which you can actually see on the site, some of which are still in the festival circuit.
Yes.
So they're not quite there.
And
yet.
this guy helped us make a few.
I did. I was going to tamp
Yeah.
that down just in
Credit
case.
where credit's due.
Yeah, just in case something horrible happens. I'm like, did you know he's a serial killer? I had nothing to do with those movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, like and subscribe at Screen Fanatic, please. That helps an enormous amount. And most importantly, I keep seeing people leave comments saying, we really like this show. Why don't more people know about this?
You got to tell them.
You're the guys I don't see cross-posting this and showing things to your friends saying, man, have you seen this? This is great. You should watch this. It makes such a difference if on your Facebook, your Twitter, your Tumblr, whatever it is that you use, you do a thing going, check this show out. This is really funny. I like it a lot. That makes a huge difference. Thank you for watching and being a fan of Crossover Event, and we'll be back next week with another show.